Moving on to our picks for this week 4 of CFL action. The Edmonton Elks visit the Ottawa Redblacks on Friday in what could be a battle of quarterbacks making their first career starts. Jarrett Daggy appears set to get the nod for Edmonton, while Tyree Adams will be under center for Ottawa. With the Redblacks as 3.5-point favorites, who you see winning this one?
I'm out here singing, teach me how to diggy, teach me how to daggy, teach me how to daggy. That was awful, but that's who I'm rolling with in this game. I think the Elks have played better on defense. They've played arguably more quality opponents, even though they have an offer in the win column. So I'll roll with Jarrett, teach me how to daggy, and the Elks getting points on the road in the nation's capital. As much as I like Tyree Adams starting at quarterback, I'm going with Daggy.
I will say this, as much as my Bomber prediction last week was awful, I think I was the one who said that Jarrett Daggy was the best quarterback in Edmonton during the preseason, and evidently Chris Jones was listening. So I'm taking the Elks plus 3.5. If this was a pick'em, I'd be tempted to take the Redblacks, but no team that is on essentially their third string quarterback and hasn't won a home game in 2 seasons should be getting 3.5 points at home. I'm rolling with Edmonton.
Damn, boys. I thought it would be a controversial pick, but the Edmonton Elks are on the road. That means they can actually win this week, right? Like, 2 rookie quarterbacks. Jarrett Daggy going up against Baron Miles' defense is going to be a much easier test than Tyree Adams facing defensive guru Chris Jones. I'm taking the Elks here.
The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are 6-point favorites. Hodge, get out your cutlery and napkin for their game against the Montreal Alouettes on Saturday. Despite coming off a disappointing loss to the BC Lions, the Owls are off to a surprising 2-0 start after dominating the Tiger Cats on the road in Week 3, though both of their wins have come against backup quarterbacks. Do you see the Bombers bouncing back to win in La Belle Province, or are the Owls for reals?
Well, I do think that the Alouettes are better than we gave them credit for. However, I do see the Winnipeg Blue Bombers bouncing back simply because I don't think the universe is ready for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to go from being the class of the league, head and shoulders above everybody, to getting their butts whipped on a week-to-week basis. I've got the Bombers bouncing back. Those players have a very sour taste in their mouth, and I think the Alouettes, after a 2-0 start, maybe feeling a little bit fat and sassy, could be ripe for the picking here. -6 on the road. I'm still taking Winnipeg, a team that, by the way, traditionally has also played very well in La Belle Province.
I've been wildly impressed with the Alouettes' start to the season. Austin Mack looks like a legitimate start receiver in that inexperienced offense. But I got to take Winnipeg here. This is a Mike O'Shea-led team. It's all about culture. You have to believe there's going to be a powerful response here. I think they cover this large spread.
Oh, boys. This one to me is very tricky because you have the Bombers again being big favorites, but the Alouettes really haven't played anybody. They beat the Redblacks in Week 1. That was Nick Arbuckle. They beat the Tiger Cats in Week 3. That was Matthew Schilt, although he played very well. 2 of those teams are arguably the worst in the CFL right now. And we know the Blue Bombers have played against a higher level of competition. Yes, they got whooped by the Lions, but I don't think that game was as large of a disparity as the score indicated. They had an 18-point win over the Saskatchewan Roughriders in Week 2. And in Week 1, it was off to a solid start. So I like the Bombers to win the game, but I just have a hard time laying this amount of points again because the stats would tell you it's difficult to do. So I'm going to do it, but I'm going to cover my eyes and pray to the heavens that Cody Fajardo continues to not turn over the football and Jason Moss runs the rock. And I think the Bombers win, but the Alouettes cover.
The BC Lions are 2.5-point road favorites for Monday night's game against the Toronto Argonauts in a battle of 2 unbeaten teams. Both clubs are coming off impressive victories this past week on the road. Who do you like and why?
Well, we've talked about it already on this podcast. The Lions have looked great to start the season, and they're only going to look better this week. Now, a lot could change before Monday. We still have several days of practice, but the rumor is both Dominique Grimes and Keon Hatcher could be back in the lineup for the Lions against Toronto. That's 2,000-yard receivers and Rhymes the best offensive weapon in the entire league, in my opinion. This Lions team is going to blow away this 2.5-point spread. I'm picking them to win.
This is a classic letdown spot, JC. Listen up because you can learn something here. The Lions coming off a massive win, looking like world beaters, getting an inflated line here. They shouldn't be this much of a favorite on the road against the defending champs who have looked great to start the season and went into a tricky spot there in Edmonton and covered a big number against the Elks. And yes, I know Edmonton hasn't won at home in a long time. That still is a difficult position to go in and do. So I like the Argos as underdogs at home. There's a veteran secondary there. I think they can get after Vernon Adams Jr. and pressure him more than he's been pressured season to date, especially with Flo or Malade, who is arguably the best pass rusher in the league right now. So I will take the double blue in those Cambridge blue uniforms, getting points at home.
With all due respect to Flo, Matthew Betts is over here with his hand up saying, moi, 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 because I think he's the best. That's one of the only French words I know, by the way. I'm practicing on Duolingo. I haven't made much progress yet. But he is somebody who I think is the best pass rusher of the CFL right now. 5 sacks in 3 games, was an absolute game record last week. To me, this game is one that right now at this line, I'm taking BC at -2.5. If the line moves at all, I would take the Toronto Argonauts. To me, the Toronto +3 or more is the buy. But if it's less than a field goal, I'm happy to eat that with the Lions on the road. The Lions have absolutely, despite their great start, no room to get complacent because the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to be right on their tail. This team needs to keep rattling off wins. So I'm taking the Lions here. But again, if that line moves an inch, I'm taking the Argos at +3 or more.